Well, hey there, I'm Joshua Johnson. It's great to be with you on this Tuesday, March 22nd, and here is some of what we're talking about tonight. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson sits for a second day of Supreme Court confirmation hearings. Among the major topics, her work as a federal public defender.
Our system is exemplary throughout the world precisely because we ensure that people who are accused of crimes are treated fairly.
If you missed the hearing, we'll have extended excerpts with side notes and expert analysis next. Also, some senators who supported Judge Jackson in her last confirmation hearing might have second thoughts now. Why is that? Then, Russian combat forces in Ukraine appear to have shrunk somewhat. The Pentagon claims to have no indication that reinforcements are on the way, and the Biden administration is considering keeping a larger troop presence in the area permanently. We'll have the latest from Ukraine. Plus, breaking tonight, sources tell us that the Biden administration plans to speed up the resettlement of Ukrainian refugees in the U.S. When to expect that announcement and what it could mean for those fleeing a war zone, coming up. It has been a really long day on Capitol Hill for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, nominated for the Supreme Court. She has been answering questions before the Senate Judiciary Committee since 9 a.m. Eastern Time. She's still answering questions. Some lines of inquiry have been more friendly, others have been more combative, others quite complex. We'll have analysis in a moment, but first, here are a few extended excerpts from today, along with some side notes for context.
Over the course of my almost decade on the bench, I have developed a methodology that I use in order to ensure that I am ruling impartially and that I am adhering to the limits on my judicial authority. I am acutely aware that as a judge in our system, I have limited power, and I am trying in every case to stay in my lane.
We've heard criticism from some about your previous work representing detainees at Guantanamo Bay. In fact, for years we've heard criticisms leveled against lawyers who have provided Guantanamo detainees with legal representation. This criticism misses one critical point. The right to counsel is a fundamental part of our constitutional sentence system.
After 9/11, there were also lawyers who recognized that our nation's values were under attack, that we couldn't let the terrorists win by changing who we were fundamentally. And what that meant was that the people who were being accused by our government of having engaged in actions related to this under our constitutional scheme were entitled to representation. We're entitled to be treated fairly. That's what makes our system the best in the world. That's what makes us exemplary. I was in the Federal Public Defender's Office when the Supreme Court, right after the Supreme Court decided that individuals who were detained at Guantanamo Bay by the president could seek review of their detention. And those cases started coming in, and federal public defenders don't get to pick their clients. They have to represent whoever comes in, and it's a service. That's what you do as a federal public defender. You are standing up for the constitutional value of representation.
If you had had your way, the executive branch could not do periodic reviews about the danger the detainee presents to the United States. They would have to make a decision of trying them or releasing them. Is that not accurate?
Respectfully, Senator, it was not my argument.
Really?
I was filing an amicus brief on behalf of clients, including the Rutherford Institute, the Cato Institute and the Constitution Project, who
When you sign on to a brief, does it not become your argument?
it does not, Senator. If you are an attorney and you are representing a client in amicus,
Is that your position when you were in private practice? I mean, you sign on to this brief making this argument, but you say it's not your position. I mean, why would you do that if it's not your position? Why would you take a client that has a position like that? Now, this is voluntary. Nobody's making you do this.
oh, Senator, I would refer you to the same sorts of statements that Chief Justice Roberts made when he came before the committee, which is that lawyers represent clients. As a mother and a judge who has had to deal with these cases, I was thinking that nothing could be further from the truth. These are some of the most difficult cases that a judge has to deal with, but as it currently stands, the way that the law is written, the way that Congress has directed the Sentencing Commission appears to be not consistent with how these crimes are committed, and therefore there's extreme disparity, as you pointed out.
You wrote that many of these laws are products of a climate of fear, hatred, and revenge. So just, is that still your view? I mean, do you think that these laws are too tough, that we're too tough on sex offenders? Explain what you meant in this case in 2013, and it seems to be the same thing you said many years ago.
Senator, it's not the same thing I said many years ago. Many years ago, as a law school student, I was evaluating a new set of legislation, state laws about registration, and I was analyzing them as law students do. It wasn't about the sex crime, it was about the characterization of the law.
In your understanding, what does critical race theory mean? What is it?
Senator, my understanding is that critical race theory is, it is an academic theory that is about the ways in which race interacts with various institutions. It doesn't come up in my work as a judge. It's never something that I've studied or relied on, and it wouldn't be something that I would rely on if I was on the Supreme Court.
Do you agree with Justice Kavanaugh that Roe v. Wade is settled as a precedent? And will you, like Justice Barrett, commit to obey all the rules of stare decisis in cases related to the issue of abortion? End quote.
Thank you, Senator. I do agree with both Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Barrett on this issue. Roe and Casey are the settled law of the Supreme Court concerning the right to terminate a woman's pregnancy. They have established a framework that the court has reaffirmed, and in order to revisit, as Justice Barrett said, the Supreme Court looks at various factors because stare decisis is a very important principle. It provides and establishes predictability, stability.
And isn't it apparent that when the Supreme Court decides that something that is not even in the Constitution is a fundamental right and no state can pass any law that conflicts with the Supreme Court's edict, particularly in an area where people have sincerely held religious beliefs, doesn't that necessarily create a conflict between what people may believe is a matter of their religious doctrine or faith and what the federal government says is the law of the land?
Well, Senator, that is the nature of a right, that when there is a right, it means that there are limitations on regulation, even if people are regulating pursuant to their sincerely held religious beliefs.
So that is some of what we heard today. Let's continue now with NBC congressional correspondent Ali Vitale, who's joining us live. And Ali, at the end of the day, I guess it's not even the end of the day, they're just taking a break because there's still 3 more senators left to testify. So there's more yet to do. But at this point in the night, where does it stand in terms of Judge Jackson? Does it look like today's hearings have brought her closer to confirmation, farther from confirmation, or are we kind of where we started this morning?
Well, look, we're kind of where we started this morning in terms of the stakes politically, but she is actually closer because we are now 1 day more into these hearings, or at least we will be once the last 3 senators are able to do their questions. Of course, that then brings us into tomorrow, a whole nother round of questions, and then Thursday when we'll hear from some external validators about who the judge is. We've already heard from some of them, but that'll be the last day of this. And then, of course, that brings us to the Judiciary Committee ultimately scheduling the vote on this. I'm getting ahead of myself because where we are today politically leaves us where we started, because most of the senators who were there were different permission structures on each side. You know this well. For Republicans, and especially those who may have presidential ambitions, we heard some of the more contentious lines of questioning from them. For Democrats, it was a little bit of blocking and tackling. Actually, before I came on with you, we heard Senator Cory Booker trying to rebut several of the points that we heard about from multiple Republicans today. You played most of the highlights there, and that's what most of the Democrats have done, tried to make it clear that even as Republicans try to land attacks, the nominee herself is doing her own pre-butting, but at the same time, she's got backup there too.
We're going to get into some more analysis of those back and forth exchanges in just a little bit. As Ali mentioned, there are 3 more senators who have yet to question Judge Jackson. Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, Senator Alex Padilla, a Democrat from California, and Senator Marsha Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee. Ali, what happens next in these hearings? What are we looking for tomorrow?
Look, tomorrow, I think the real question is, what questions could they possibly have left? It does really feel like each senator did what they came to do in terms of key issues that we thought that they might bring up, whether or not they're in the mainstream. For example, Sheldon Whitehouse brought up the issue of dark money. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who has become an expert on antitrust law, really went into a line of questioning on that. And then on the Republican side, a lot of the attack lines that we thought we would hear from people like Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, all of those really did come to manifest. The person who I'm looking at tonight is Marsha Blackburn as well. She really did, in her opening statement, make the larger example of what I've seen from Republicans throughout these hearings, which is the larger narratives that they are trying to set in the midterms on Democrats being soft on crime, on anti-racism work pervading academic institutions, the idea of critical race theory, all of the culture wars that they are trying to run on in the midterms. Those have really been the contours of what Republicans have done in these hearings. So I'm looking to see if that continues. And then, of course, if any minds are actually changed. The senators who I've been talking to as they've been coming out of these hearings, if they were a yes on Ketanji Brown Jackson when they were walking in, they're probably still a yes. If they were a no or a lean no, they might not be saying it outwardly at this point. Many Republicans are in this boat, but at the same time, it doesn't necessarily sound like any minds have been changed, though that really is ultimately, at the end of the day, what I'm looking for this to do is, are minds changed, or was this all a process that the partisanship was really baked in, even as the White House and the nominee tried to elevate this into a conversation around issues and qualifications, not just red versus blue.
Yeah, and Ali, since you brought that up, I was going to ask you in terms of how much of this is the politics of this process rather than the advice and consent part of it that the Constitution requires the Senate to do. I mean, a lot of what happened, particularly early in the day, was sort of to relitigate issues that came up with previous Supreme Court nominees, particularly the 3 that President Trump nominated. There was a back and forth about a document that Senator Mazie Hirono had access to with regards to instructions ahead of sentencing, and some of the Republicans on the committee complaining that the Democrats got access to something that they didn't get. How much of this is talking to Judge Jackson, and how much of this is kind of talking to the rest of the American people?
a lot of it is talking to the rest of the American people. And it depends which American people you're talking to. It depends on the different cable network viewer that you might be trying to reach and which side of the aisle that you are on. At the same time, I do think that the long shadow that has been cast by the Kavanaugh hearings specifically, but also more recently the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, those are very fresh in the minds of a lot of senators, specifically in regards to Kavanaugh, because most lawmakers that I talk to, and I'm sure that you hear the same thing, those were dark, very partisan days on Capitol Hill. A lot of palpable memories in the minds of lawmakers about the way that the Kavanaugh hearings really deeply split the lawmakers in that body. And so really one of the more contentious moments that I heard today, I was in the room when Senator Lindsey Graham started questioning Judge Jackson, and people who might have been looking down at their phones or looking down or just kind of maybe zoning out a little bit in the hearing because this day has been long, everyone snapped to attention the moment that Senator Lindsey Graham asked Judge Jackson to rate her level of faith on a 1 to 10. That was a moment that really jogged people to attention. There was a lot of awkwardness in the room. The same thing happened later when Ted Cruz did his line of questioning. Those were two moments that really stood out to me. But again, if we're talking in the broader landscape here, I'm not necessarily sure that it changed anything. There are those few people who we're always looking for. None of them actually happened to be on the Judiciary Committee. Lindsey Graham was one of those who initially we thought there might have been a chance, but at the same time, the key people looking forward are people like Susan Collins, Joe Manchin, Lisa Murkowski. The people who we always tend to talk about are also going to be at the center of this, Joshua.
You know, when it's your birthday, we let you do the top of the show so you can get in and get done quickly. So happy birthday, Allie. And thank you for starting us off tonight. That's NBC
grateful.
Congressional
Thank
Correspondent.
You. Happy birthday to you,
Absolutely.
my friend.
The two birthday babies get to start the show. We appreciate it, Allie. That's NBC Congressional Correspondent Allie Vitale starting us off. Thank you very much. Let's continue with some analysis now from Jeff Rosen, professor of law at the George Washington University and also the CEO of the National Constitution Center. Professor Rosen, welcome. Good to see you again.
Great to see you too, and happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Also with us is Cheryl Casson, professor of law, civil rights, and social justice at Georgetown. Professor Casson, good evening. Welcome.
Good to be back with you, Joshua.
Let's begin with Senator Lindsey Graham, which is where Allie Vitale left off. One of the things that he questioned her about, Professor Rosen, was her work as a public defender and trying to tie it to her legal philosophy or ideologies, particularly her work as a federal public defender for a Guantanamo Bay detainee named Kai Ali Ghul. What did you make, Professor Rosen, of those exchanges in terms of her work as a federal public defender?
The effort to link her to the defendant she represented fell completely flat because, as she said, everyone from Chief Justice Roberts to senators themselves have said that it's the job of a lawyer to represent all sides. In most of those cases, she hadn't even selected the representation, and she was just doing her job. More significantly, she really rebutted the claim that she was any kind of pro-defendant extremist in her many exchanges about child pornography, where she just revealed herself to be so judicious. The care with which she worked through the statutes was so striking. That amazing exchange with Senator Cotton, where she talked about the defendant who she'd initially sentenced to a longer term and then gave him compassionate release because Congress changed the law. And then in this exchange with Senator Durbin, she talked about her judicial philosophy as being based on three prongs. First, to be neutral, to clear her mind of preconceptions. Second, to take in the facts and the law. And third, to apply the law to the facts, aware of the constraints on the judiciary. And that was about the most eloquent statement of judicial restraint you could imagine. So all told, there were a lot of efforts to paint her as a soft on crime activist, but they didn't succeed. If it's not too much, if I could just add one other thing that really struck me, that remarkable exchange with Senator Booker, where so movingly he said, you know, your brother's sitting behind you. He was a police officer and he served in the Army. You know about the effect of crime on Black families, don't you? And she said, I certainly do. She used a word like anguish that she experienced. And right. Their joint experience about what the real effect of crime was so much more powerful than all the attempts to paint her as a caricature. I really thought that revealed a tremendous amount about her.
Professor Cashin, let's pick up with that and part of the exchange that she had with Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican from Missouri, about the prison time that she gave some child pornography convicts. And remember, there's discretion. There's a range that you're given in the law, and then it's up to judges to choose what they believe is an appropriate sentence within that range. But here is part of her exchange with Senator Hawley today. Watch.
And the point, Senator, is that you said before the probation office is making recommendations and they do so on a case-by-case basis. That is what Congress requires. This is not done at the level of...
But you had discretion, Judge. You admit that, right? I just want to be clear.
Senator, sentencing is a discretionary act of a judge, but it's not a numbers game.
Professor Cashin, could you dig in on that point a little bit? Just kind of a judgeship 101. I think it would be easy for the average person to say, if you're convicted of child pornography, why shouldn't we throw the book at you? You were convicted of a heinous crime. Of course you should be sentenced at the top of the sentencing range. But Judge Jackson was trying to get at something more nuanced there.
Well, first off, I want to echo something that Jeffrey Rosen just said. That I was very surprised at how acutely limited Judge Jackson is in acute awareness of the limitations of her methodology, right? She actually invoked the language of originalists, textualists, saying that her starting point for judging is the text and the original public meaning. And she actually disavowed living constitutionalism at one point. So, you know, she's in the mainstream. And with Josh Hawley, you know, frankly, what he's doing is engaging in character assassination, suggesting that Judge Jackson by herself is departing from sentencing guidelines and should be at the top when he has voted for Republican-favored candidates who have done the exact same thing. And in fact, as you know, several Democrats brought out, she has something like 70% of judges who are caught by the overly harsh, out-of-date guidelines with respect to child porn defendants depart downward. She is utterly in the mainstream. So yeah, and we got her judiciousness was clear throughout the day, and it was such an interesting lesson for lay people about judges having to look at the text, at what Congress has said, at multiple factors in individual cases. So I think she did very well for herself.
One of the things that I think has been made a lot of Judge Jackson is how similar she is to Justice Stephen Breyer, who will be retiring this summer. Here is part of what she said about one particular aspect of Justice Breyer's legacy, which is his pragmatism, his ability to build consensus. Watch.
Consensus building was one of the things that Justice Breyer was particularly good at in terms of his personality. In the time that I clerked for him, I witnessed the way in which he continually reaches out to colleagues, continually seeks common ground. And it's something that I would hope to be able to emulate if I were to be confirmed.
Professor Rosen, do you think that the Senate and the Senate Judiciary Committee are looking for another Stephen Breyer, somebody who's in that same vein? Is that what they expect Judge Jackson to become if she's confirmed, or are the senators, based on the questions today, looking for maybe something else?
Well, the senators seem to be heading toward a vote on partisan lines, for better or for worse. But it's really important for the country to imagine that Justice Jackson, if and when she's confirmed, might follow Justice Breyer's model, because there are some cases where Justice Breyer joined with Justice Kagan and Chief Justice Roberts in forming moderate consensuses that avoided 5-4 splits. And Justice Jackson does seem to seek that. She noted suits where she dismissed an environmental suit against the Trump administration because she thought that the law didn't allow it. She wouldn't allow a suit against Trump's border law to go forward. And most important of all, she's so keen, as Professor Cashin said, on limits on the judicial role that she might very well be interested in working with Chief Justice Roberts and the more moderate justices to stop the court from driving off a cliff, because we're about to see the most dramatic fissures in the court in modern history, with the abortion case and the Second Amendment cases on the horizon. There may not be a whole lot of opportunities for compromises, but her tremendous care, her judiciousness, and just the word that kept coming to mind is, this is a judge's judge. The fact that she was endorsed by Judge Griffin, a Republican appointee on the D.C. Circuit, who came and introduced her, is hugely significant. That doesn't happen to a activist judge, or even a really hardcore, ideologue of any kind. She has tremendous respect among both sides. And to that degree, she'll just might be a really. This is very important to Justice Kagan too, to look for efforts to find common ground with Chief Justice Roberts. It's central to Roberts' effort to stop the court from driving itself off a cliff. So that's so much more important. All the stuff about the child pornography and all these issues of the day for the midterm elections. Justice Jackson may be on this court for decades. I mean, it's very, what we have to do, and Professor Cashin's so right, that we actually learned a lot from just listening to her about her temperament, about her character. The fact that Senator Booker asked her, what did you learn from your parents? And she just kept saying over and over again, the value of hard work in America's anything is possible. It's just really, really striking and very impressive.
Well, and one of the things, Professor Cashin, before I have to let you two go, we can't go past the fact that this would be a big step forward in terms of the diversity of the court. She would be a public defender, a federal public defender. That's experience that hasn't really been on the Supreme Court. Obviously, the first black woman to be on the Supreme Court. And it's worth noting, just as a sidebar, according to our station in the San Francisco Bay Area, that the California Supreme Court today confirmed its first Latina, its first Latin woman of Latin descent, to be on the California Supreme Court. Justice Patricia Guerrero will be joining the court. She grew up in the Imperial Valley, which is an agricultural part of the state of California, and she is the child of Mexican immigrants. So Professor Cashin, I think it's hard to talk about today without talking what it would mean in terms of diversifying the criminal justice system all over the country.
Right. Well, you have, frankly, I believe the most qualified nominee offered in a generation. I won't rehearse all of her qualifications. Well, why would Republicans oppose a eminently qualified black woman when she's not even going to upset the 6-3 conservative-leaning balance of the court, right? It's sad to me that someone so very qualified is possibly going to get confirmed only by a party line vote, when we used to have a nomination process where Antonin Scalia got confirmed unanimously. RBG, left-leaning, confirmed 96-3. What is the optics and message for the party of Lincoln to deny a single vote, possibly, to a black woman who's frankly overqualified compared to she extremely qualified? It's very sad, and they could have used this as an opportunity, since they're not going to lose the conservative balance on the court, to repair a nation in a time of war, right? To unify. So, that's sad to me, but I still celebrate it. It's a wonderful day, and I think Ketanji Brown Jackson did wonderful for the sisterhood today. She represented very, very well.
I hear that. Professors Jeff Rosen and Cheryl Cashin, we are in recess at the moment. We're waiting for the hearing to reconvene with three Senators Kennedy, Padilla, and Blackburn, yet to question Judge Jackson. We appreciate you two making time for us tonight. Thank you very much. Up next, an update from Ukraine. We are live in Lviv with the latest. We're glad you're with us for Now Tonight from NBC News. In Ukraine, Russian forces are continuing to attack key cities. Things remain particularly bad in the southern port city of Mariupol. A similar situation is unfolding in Kherson. That Russian-occupied city is just north of Crimea. Kherson was one of the first big cities to fall under Russian control. Today, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry said that the city is almost out of food and medical supplies. Efforts to establish humanitarian corridors in and out of Kherson have failed so far. Yesterday, Russian forces there fired live rounds and stun grenades at pro-Ukrainian protesters. Despite this, a senior U.S. defense official says the Ukrainian military is trying to take back territory and that Russia's combat forces are apparently shrinking. The Pentagon has indicated that some Russian soldiers have been evacuated because of frostbite for lack of enough cold weather gear. You may remember the Biden administration moved more U.S. troops to NATO countries near Ukraine ahead of this war. NBC News has learned that the administration plans to make that shift permanent. The administration is also set to release a new plan to make it easier for some of Ukraine's most vulnerable refugees to resettle here in the U.S. Those would include journalists, activists, and members of the LGBTQ community. We'll have more on those two developments in a moment, but let's get to NBC's Ali Arouzi, who joins us from Lviv in western Ukraine. Ali, there's been reporting of Ukraine trying to take back some territory that the Russian soldiers have claimed. What do we know about that?
That's right, Joshua. The Russian forces have made some advances and occupied some suburbs northwest of Kyiv in Bucha, Hostomel, and Irpin. And they had also made advances in the west suburb of Kyiv in a place called Makariv. But the Ukrainian forces were able to take that back after some fierce fighting in that suburb. And of course, Kyiv is a hard nut to crack for the Russians. It is a city on a hill. It is heavily fortified. The roads and streets are very narrow there, making it difficult for Russian armament and tanks to maneuver their way around there, and not least of all because they're being met with fierce resistance by the Ukrainian fighters in that city. And of course, it's where President Zelensky is still standing and giving his speeches from. But the situation in Mariupol is devastating. The city has been reduced to rubble. Only about 10% of it still stands. And the Russians continue their relentless bombardment of Mariupol because it's of such strategic importance to them. It would create a land corridor from Russia to Crimea to the Donbass region. And also it would financially choke off the Ukrainians. Mariupol is a very important port there. In peacetime, most of the corn, steel, and coal would be shipped out of Mariupol to the Middle East and the rest of the world. If they can't do that, that means money isn't flowing into this country, and it makes it harder for them to fight in this war. But they are still putting up a stiff resistance in Mariupol, despite being bombarded by missiles, shelling constantly day in, day out. But it hasn't fallen to the Russians, and that's made them resort to these very medieval sort of starve and siege tactics on that city. They've sparked a humanitarian crisis there, cutting the place off from water, gas, electricity, and food. We spoke to some of the residents of Mariupol, and the picture they paint there is just horrific. One young woman I spoke to said she had made a suicide pact with her sister because they were scared they were going to starve to death, and they didn't want the pain of starvation to go through. Luckily, they did get out of that city, but for the other residents of Mariupol, it remains a terrifying situation, and the feeling is the Russians are going to continue the bombardment of that city until they bomb the residents into submission. So it looks like it's just going to be a worst-case scenario there.
A suicide pact, my goodness. Well, we also know that President Zelensky spoke to Italy's parliament today. He's spoken to Pope Francis, and of course we know that President Biden is planning to make a trip to the region soon and continue his conversations with NATO allies. Thank you, Ali. That's NBC's Ali Arouzi reporting tonight from Lviv, Ukraine. Let's stay in Lviv now with more from the Ukrainian people. As you heard from Ali's report, their lives have been upended since this conflict began. From our partners at Sky News, Sally Lockwood has more.
The bombs over Mariupol drop both day and night. This is as close as we can get to the hell unfolding there. But on the ground, brave civilians are risking their lives to send pictures to the outside world. 780 evacuees from Mariupol arrived in the western city of Lviv earlier. Their stories now one of the few ways for the world to learn the horrors unfolding there. Alina managed to escape 5 days ago.
There are lots of people in Mariupol now. You cannot even imagine how many children are there. There was a 6-day-old and a 3-month-old children in the shelters. There are so many of them. In the neighboring house, 2 little girls became orphans and just watched their father dying, and the neighbors took them in. They are still in Mariupol because they cannot leave.
Alina only learned her apartment had been bombed after seeing this image online. The 4th floor from the top was her home until a few days ago. Lviv's train stations are packed with families who fled fighting. Each has a story of sadness and suffering. Alana and her little boy are here from Kiev, clutching his deflated football. They're trying to reach relatives near Dnipro.
There were bombings. It was very loud. We saw and heard shootings on the streets. A bus with army cadets was shot at. My son couldn't bear it anymore emotionally. He couldn't sleep at nights. That's why we left.
Denis is a reminder dangers have reached the west of Ukraine too. Injured in the attack at the military base just 15 miles from the Polish border. Bombed by Russia a little over a week ago. He temporarily lost his sight after the attack.
A lot of people died, but we are still alive. As for my injuries, I have a fracture of the facial bone, shattered elbow and jaw, and some bruises.
So many here are getting on trains with little idea of a plan beyond survival.
10 million people in Ukraine have been made homeless since the start of this war, leaving with the precious few things that they can carry, but also bearing the stories of the horrors unfolding in the cities that they're fleeing. For people escaping Mariupol, it's one of the few ways now that the world can learn what's happening in their city.
New satellite images show the theatre in Mariupol surrounded by burning buildings. Rescue workers still unable to reach 1,000 civilians thought to be trapped under its rubble.
The most frightening thing is that the world will forget about Mariupol, that they would talk about us for a day, 2 days, and then Mariupol citizens will be just dying there in the basements.
She's escaped with a message from Mariupol. Don't forget about us. Sally Lockwood, Sky News, Lviv in western Ukraine.
As this war continues, please keep sending us your questions about it. We are at NBC Now Tonight on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. There you'll also find video from some of the previous questions of yours that we have answered, and one of our debates on one of the hot topics in this war, which is a no-fly zone over Ukraine. You'll find that on social at NBC Now Tonight. You can also leave us a voicemail with your question, 888-575-2NBC, or email us nowtonight@nbcnews.com. President Biden is considering sending more troops to NATO allies in Europe. What would that mean for the war in Ukraine? We'll get to that just ahead. Stay close. President Biden recently increased the U.S. troop presence in NATO allies near Ukraine, including Poland. That increase might not be temporary. Mr. Biden will review his options while on his trip to Europe this week for a NATO summit. Back in February, ahead of the invasion, the Biden administration sent about 2,000 troops to Europe. Most of them were sent to Poland and Germany. Thousands of troops who were already in Europe were repositioned. This potential move comes as NATO begins cold weather training for its response force. The NATO response force is made up of 40,000 troops. They were deployed for the first time ever when Russia invaded Ukraine. But to be clear, they were not deployed to Ukraine. They were deployed to NATO member countries around Ukraine. NATO says about 30,000 troops from 27 countries will have cold weather training in Norway. The training includes live fire and freezing water exercises. NBC's Courtney Cuby filed this exclusive report embedded with the response force.
Joshua, I'm here in remote coastal Norway, north of the Arctic Circle, for Exercise Cold Response 22. This is a biannual exercise, and this year's scenario is this. Norway has been attacked. NATO invokes Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, which says that an attack on one of NATO's 30 members is an attack on all. The United States and NATO partners descend on this country, and as this fictional enemy is attacking it from the air, land, and sea, the U.S. and these NATO partners begin their defense. What we saw here today was actually the next phase of it when they started the offense, when they began to attack this fictional enemy. Now, of course, this exercise has been planned for months, way before Russia invaded Ukraine, but it's occurring as this exercise is occurring as the war is going on in Ukraine, and that is in the back of many people's minds here. Cold response is really intended for the United States and these NATO partners to learn how to work together in a conflict, and not just work together, but work under these harsh environments like we're seeing here right now. Extreme cold, often blizzard-like conditions, learning how to operate together and operate their equipment in these sorts of conditions that specifically the United States isn't always used to working under. We saw just how dangerous this environment can be last week when an Osprey crashed, killing 4 U.S. Marines on board. And while there still has not been a determination of what caused that crash, the reality is there were blizzard-like conditions, heavy winds that day. The weather was extremely bad here in the area. The Marines we spoke to today acknowledge they are learning a lot about how to operate in this sort of austere climate. The exercise goes on for another week or two. And again, while it has nothing to do with the conflict in Ukraine specifically, the reality is this year's exercise has really taken on new meaning with the potential for real-world consequences. Joshua?
Thank you, Courtney. That's NBC Pentagon and National Security Correspondent Courtney Cubing. In a moment, we'll have a look at Ukrainians entering the United States from Mexico. A growing number of Ukrainian refugees are crossing America's southern border. How is that affecting other migrants trying to get in? Plus, we'll have an update on the plane crash in China before we go. More than 3 million Ukrainians have fled since Russia invaded. Not everyone's headed to other countries in Europe. Some refugees are arriving at the border between the United States and Mexico. Less than 2 weeks ago, President Biden made it clear that America would embrace them.
I will welcome Ukrainian refugees. We should welcome them here with open arms. They need access.
Customs data show that this January and February, Border Patrol recorded 520 encounters with Ukrainian nationals in Texas, Arizona, and California. That's up substantially from 2020 and 2021. And that statistic has some wondering if a double standard might be at play. The U.S. is welcoming refugees from this war-torn country in Europe. But what about refugees from war-torn countries in Central America? NBC's Guad Venegas has been looking into this and joins us now. And Guad, could you explain to us, first of all, why it is that refugees from Ukraine are ending up, and of all places, at the U.S.-Mexico border?
Right. So after the war began, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said all Ukrainians were welcome in Mexico if they were fleeing the war with no visa requirements. So that allowed any Ukrainian who could to find a flight to Cancun or to Mexico City and eventually make their way to the U.S.-Mexico border. Many of them have relatives or friends in the U.S., and they are the ones that are essentially telling them to come to the U.S. border so they can seek asylum and try to live in the U.S. while the war plays out.
Now, a lot of this controversy has to do with a policy called Title 42. What is Title 42?
So Title 42 makes use of a health law that allows border officials to expel migrants entering the country undocumented and also shut down the ports of entry to anyone that is seeking asylum. This was put in place during the Trump era, and it continues to be the policy of the U.S. affecting the border nowadays.
And so because of the way that Title 42 is enforced, it allows kind of a different way to, at least to the Trump administration's view, manage the flow of people coming across the border. But now we have this document, an internal letter from the Department of Homeland Security that CBS News obtained. How does this letter factor into this?
Here's the thing. Under Title 42, agents at the border can give exemptions on a case-by-case basis. So CBS shared this internal document that was given to agents at the border, basically reminding them that they can make exemptions. And DHS Secretary Mayorkas wanted them to know that for Ukrainians, because of the war, they can give these exemptions. Now, we were reporting at the border for 3 days, 2 weeks ago, and what we saw is that every day agents would come to the port of entry and ask people with Ukrainian passports to show them, and eventually they would allow them to enter the U.S. Now, Mayorkas has also now told reporters that he issued guidance to border officials, reminding them that they can give these exemptions to the Ukrainians, something we haven't seen given to other migrants.
One of the things that came out early in this, when the story began to break, is, oh, so you're letting people who look white come across the border, but not people who look brown. But it seems like there's a little more to this, because then you also have some anti-war Russian migrants who are at the southern border, and they're being treated differentially too, right?
Right. So there's a lot of things happening at the border. We've seen Russians arrive at the U.S.-Mexico border for the last few months. In fact, the numbers increased a lot at the end of last year, many of them fleeing Russia because, of course, they are against the government policies there. Now, the Russians have not received the exemptions that we've seen given to the Ukrainians. But at first, the criticism was that a lot of people from places like Haiti, Guatemala, and other countries, like you mentioned, who flee the violence, have not been given the exemptions that the people saw were being given to the Ukrainians. But now you have groups of Russians who are also at the border and have not been given, you could say, this preferential treatment because they are from Russia, and many of them had fled Russia, also being against the war. So they're sort of stuck at the border at the moment.
Can you clarify for us, though, in terms of this discretion? I think particularly for people like me who are born in the United States and have never really had to touch the immigration system except for, like, customs on your way flying back into Canada. Like, that's the bulk of my experience with immigration. It can feel like a black box, feel a little capricious, especially the idea that a Border Patrol agent could go, you can come in. Is that unusual, or is that the way it works?
Well, you know, border agents operate under CBP, Customs and Border Protection, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. So the way they operate is internal. They don't share a lot of the details of why they make certain decisions. What we know is that they can analyze each case on a case-by-case basis, and they can make a determination for humanitarian reasons, for example. So when they walk up and they meet a family, in many cases, attorneys that are helping these families on the Mexican side of the border can submit a request for an exemption for humanitarian reasons, but we really don't know exactly what they look at. What we have seen is that when the Ukrainians began arriving, they were all getting, or not all, but many of them were getting these exemptions that we didn't see offered to other migrants. But we have seen President Biden say that we are welcoming Ukrainians with open arms. And of course, they are leaving a country that is now under attack by Russia.
Before I got to let you go, we have some new reporting tonight from Julia Ainsley, Carol Lee, and Dan DeLuce that the Biden administration this week may be unveiling a plan to streamline the resettlement of some Ukrainian refugees, which would allow vulnerable Ukrainians, activists, journalists, LGBTQIA people to safely enter the U.S., at least temporarily. The White House is considering the legal avenue through which this will be done. Before I got to let you go, we should be clear that there are a few different things we're talking about, right? We're talking about refugees. We're talking about asylees. There are a couple of different corridors into the U.S. that we're talking about that all have to be reconciled somehow.
Right. So overall, the U.S. has been making small immigration policy changes to favor Ukrainians. First, we saw the TPS, temporary protection status, for any Ukrainian who was in the U.S. before the war began, people on vacation, people on work trips who couldn't return to Ukraine. So they can remain under this program in the U.S. And now we've seen the asylum seekers at the border receive these exemptions. That was the guidance that was issued internally. But you also have a different category, which are the refugees, people that are not inside the U.S., who are in Ukraine, who are asking for refugee status. So now apparently what this would do is allow more slots for the U.S. to bring a lot of these people from Europe directly into the U.S.
NBC's Guad Venegas. It's a fascinating story. Guad, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
In China, authorities are still trying to make sense of Monday's plane crash. Today, Chinese state officials reported that there are no survivors. Crash experts say they're still trying to figure out why this happened. The China Eastern plane dropped more than 20,000 feet in just over a minute. NBC aviation correspondent Tom Costello has more about what that could have felt like.
Yeah, we are inside a simulator for the 737-800. This is the plane that crashed in China. We are right now at Dream Aero in Bethesda, Maryland. Captain Mark Weiss, retired from American Airlines, is kind of putting us through the scenario. Mark, we're at 29,000 feet. This is the altitude that the plane was cruising at when suddenly they went into a steep and fatal nosedive. Can you put us into that nosedive and show us what happened?
Absolutely. Everything was normal, and all of a sudden the plane went like this. Now I'm just going to come back on the power, which we don't know if they did or they didn't. But right now we're descending at 40 degrees. We're going down to over 6,000 feet.
25,000 feet now. Now 24. Now we're 23. It's going faster and faster and faster.
Right. If you can take a look over here, you see the airspeed, and look what's happening.
This plane is spiraling, and it seems to be out of control.
Absolutely.
Can they pull out of it at this point, or is it too late?
The simulator you can pull out of, but in the airplane with the aerodynamic forces on you, not enough time.
You're pulling too many G's.
Absolutely.
And they'd be fighting for their lives.
Absolutely. Right now, we're going down through 9,000 feet.
10,000 feet now. 9,000 feet now. And this plane has crashed. You know, the amazing thing about this, and we'll turn off the alarm, the amazing thing about this is it feels so real because of the visual orientation. It literally makes you feel as if we're crashing, and you may have seen me jump just as a natural reaction. We don't know why this plane crashed. Was there a mechanical failure? Was there a structural failure? Was it intentional, Mark? We don't know if somebody intentionally crashed this plane.
No, you don't. And until you get the black box, the cockpit voice recorder in particular, you're not even going to know who's in the cockpit.
That's right. Cockpit voice recorder, flight data recorder. Chinese crews are still looking for that right now, but it may be that they suffered catastrophic damage in the crash. So this is kind of what they went through. It would have been terrifying. It would have been horrifying. And likely they had no chance to survive.
Certainly for the passengers, even worse, while you're here fighting for your life, you're doing everything you can. All the training that you've gone through throughout your career, you're using every bit of that to try and struggle to save the aircraft.
Yeah. That's what it must have looked like, how terrifying it must have been from inside the simulator here, again, at Dream Aero in Bethesda, Maryland. Back to you.
Terrifying indeed. Thank you, Tom. That's NBC aviation correspondent Tom Costello. Finally tonight, conservatorships became a big issue after the uproar over how Britney Spears was being treated. Now another high-profile conservatorship has been terminated after 9 years. Former child star Amanda Bynes petitioned to dissolve her agreement in late February with her parents' full support. Ms. Bynes is 35 now, and that conservatorship began back in 2013. She called it a dark period in her life. Her parents' attorney says they have been preparing for the conservatorship to end. They also are apparently excited for the next chapter in their daughter's life. A statement from her reads in part, quote, "I have been working hard to improve my health so that I can live and work independently, and I will continue to prioritize my well-being in this next chapter," unquote. And all of this comes just a few months after pop star Britney Spears was freed from her own conservatorship, but she remains in legal battles with her father. Hey, thank you for making time for us tonight. Our coverage of the Supreme Court confirmation hearings continues tomorrow morning. If you want to watch it now, you can go to the NBC News app where it's streaming live. Go to the NBC News YouTube channel. We're streaming it live. Senators Kennedy, Padilla, and Blackburn still have yet to question Judge Jackson. We also welcome your questions about that and your questions about the war in Ukraine. Send them to us at NBC Now Tonight on social media. Leave us a voicemail, 888-575-2NBC, or email nowtonight@nbcnews.com. Our live coverage of Day 3 of the hearings picks up tomorrow. We'll have another wrap-up then, but until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.